Humans are complex with multiple layers and characteristics that combine to form a whole that is often difficult to define. What happens when something you can't change about yourself is deemed by others to be undesirable? This is a story of what occurs when someone's identity becomes the basis for negative, even hurtful sentiments that are then enforced by society, effectively barring them from the right to a dignified life.
Mahali nimekaa, watu hawezi kukaa pamoja na hawezi kunikaribia.
We used to be told if you're HIV positive, you're not supposed to give birth. That is why they sterilized us.
These headlines are only the tip of the iceberg. Behind them are lives defined by a constant fight for dignity.
Because in certain areas we've been to, I think this was Nakuru County, we had people speak of, oh, we had floods affecting us, but it's only a certain area where people got support because we were told our votes has Jai Gorogoro.
While We the People of Kenya is the opening line of the preamble to the Constitution of Kenya, the reality in the society we live in is there are many who are left out due to a variety of systemic issues. And for these people, the weight of discrimination is a burden they carry in silence. What lies beneath is the untold story of those whose rights are denied, whose humanity is questioned, and whose worth is overlooked. Humans are complex with multiple layers and characteristics that combine to form a whole that is often difficult to define. However, discrimination, the unjust treatment of individuals on the grounds of ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation or disability status, is an injustice that reduces these complex factors to singular traits that are deemed undesirable, pushing its victims to the fringes of society, often with no way to advocate for themselves. What happens when something you can't change about yourself is deemed by others to be undesirable?
Najua niko na upofu. Kama ni size 1, kama ni size 2, nina seti. Alafu naanza kuweka usi na unaiyo.
This is a story of what occurs when someone's identity becomes the basis for negative, even hurtful sentiments that are then enforced by society, effectively barring them from the right to a dignified life.
Ukishaitwa Mohamed, tayari wewe ni culprit nje.
Mahali nimekaa, watu hawezi kukaa pamoja na hawezi kunikaribia.
Discrimination comes in many forms. For some, it is the daily struggle to be seen as equal and deserving of the same rights. For others, it is the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of prejudice that is hard to break out of.
We used to be told if you're HIV positive, you're not supposed to give birth. That is why they sterilized us.
These headlines are only the tip of the iceberg. Behind them are lives defined by a constant fight for dignity.
People learn prejudice and discrimination. These are learned. Nobody is born knowing which gender to look down upon, but they are taught.
While We the People of Kenya is the opening line of the preamble to the Constitution of Kenya, the reality in the society we live in is there are many who are left out due to a variety of systemic issues. And for these people, the weight of discrimination is a burden they carry in silence. What lies beneath is the untold story of those whose rights are denied, whose humanity is questioned, and whose worth is overlooked. In Kilungu Makueni, Eastern Kenya, just 110 kilometers from the country's capital, Nairobi, is where the hills rise endlessly and the land whispers of simplicity, just like any other rural village in Kenya. Tucked within this winding hill is Penina Kilunja, whose life is anything but simple.
Siendangi kwa njua. Hata kama nataka chakula kwa njua ninavumilia. Yaani kama nataka chakula kutoka kwa shamba, ninasema hapana, sitaenda na hiyo njua.
Her skin carries flecks of black melanin. Her eyelashes, pale as if covered by dust, shield eyes that have learned to look away from the stares of others.
Kwa kupitia miumbile yangu, nilikuwa na shida ya kukaa na watu kwa wengi, yaani kwa wingi wa watu, kwa sababu watu wanakaa wakiniongofa. Nikienda mahali kuna watu wanasonga songa. Kwa sababu wananiona mimi si mtu wa kawaida.
Penina's skin condition is a mystery that elicits fear and superstition. Her condition is genetic, but the fact that she looks so different from everyone in her community means that she is often isolated.
Ni kitu inafanyika kutoka niwe mtoto mdogo kabla ya kwenda shule. Nilikuwa wakati mwingine nikidhulumiwa na watu na kupigwa na kuvutwa hata nywele. Nikiitwa kama mzungu.
While some societies have come to recognize people with albinism as they truly are, whole, vibrant and human, there are still places where their existence is seen as an anomaly. Now, at 60 years of age, Penina has learned to take her condition in stride, but she is still aware of how she is seen by those around her. She, however, loves to sew. It is her quiet refuge. It is not just a skill, but a part of her.
Ninaenjoy sana hii kazi yangu. Hii kitambaa nilishona mwaka wa 1987. Na nilifunzwa kushona hii kitambaa na sister wa Consolata kutoka upande wa Italy. Na akatuambia tutie bidii. Tushone mingi ikujiwe na Wahindi kutoka kaunti ya Nairobi.
This is the sewing machine the Catholic sisters gifted her soon after she dropped out of school after her Certificate of Primary Education CPE. While she has trained other women to sew, she has had to deal with insults and other forms of humiliation.
Mtu anakuja ananiuliza, unaweza kunifunza? Mimi ninakubali. Lakini nikianza kumfunza, ananiambia ataniletea pesa. Saa ingine ananiletea pesa kidogo. Saa ingine ananiletea chakula. Na ninaendelea na maisha yakiwa magumu.
Despite her formal training and the valuable skills she brings, Penina finds that society only sees her as a poor, uneducated widow with a disability. All these labels she carries like an invisible weight has come to shape every interaction she has, a reminder of every opportunity she has been denied, all reinforcing the layers of discrimination she faces daily.
Kazi yangu ni mzuri sana. Lakini nikishona fulana na nikipeleka pale kwa soko, watu hawezi kuninunulia. Wanaongofa kunikaribia.
Penina's story is not unique. It is the daily reality for millions facing a similar existence, a lens that magnifies the intolerance caused by multiple factors such as poverty, disability, gender, age, ethnicity, and even religion, which converge to create barriers that seem insurmountable.
Because in certain areas we've been to, I think this was Nakuru County, we had people speak of, we had floods affecting us, but it's only a certain area where people got support because we were told our votes as Jai Gorogoro.
Zaina Kombo has interacted with communities across Kenya as an equality and non-discrimination campaign manager at Amnesty International Kenya. One worrying trend, she says, is the normalization of such biases and discrimination in the country.
We really have to dig deep and see this as a national issue, as something that threatens not just individual families or individual beings, but also our cohesion as a country.
A report by Amnesty International Kenya, published in November 2023, identified persons living in poverty, the youth, persons with disabilities, and the elderly as being the most vulnerable and least protected against discrimination in the country.
When we start profiling each other in those boxes of the various identities that we have other than a human being, then we start feeling, we start feeling entitled over the rest of us. And that's dangerous because, for instance, when you have high crime rates, and this is also connected to, I could dare say, extremism. Because the moment you're rejected by your family, you're rejected by your community, you start looking for those groups that will give you a sense of belonging.
For vulnerable individuals, the consequences can be far-reaching, especially when their fear of being targeted becomes ingrained in their daily life.
A lot of time nilikuwa natumia jina za mtaa. Unafaa una jina at least zile za mtaa unapewa kama Foaya. Unaitwa nani? Naitwa Foaya. Time utajua jina yangu labda ni time umeinteract na mimi sana, ndio kama naitwa Mohamed Malicha. But time mingi unapata natumia hiyo jina Foaya kama one of the survival of the identification, because time mob nilikuwa na feel jina zetu zinafanya na identification yetu inakuwa a lot of questions.
Mohamed Malicha knows what it means to bear a Muslim name in Kenya and look like what society has often described as an outsider.
Wanawakilisha Kenya in Commonwealth Youth Games. Ilikuwa 2008 Pune, ilikuwa India. And then nakumbuka hiyo time ilikuwa the team supposed to travel, and then ikakuwa mini baki, but team ikaweza kubaki, and then nikapelekwa vetting ndio niweze kupata passport hiyo time. Nikadanganya house 7th floor. Nikapata nilikuwa ni sisi wote, lakini nikapata mimi peke yangu. But nilikuwa that cautious sana, nikauliza kwa nini mimi peke yangu niko hapa? Nikaambiwa wewe sababu ya jina yako. Ikunifurahisha because you know time nilianza kurealize tuko equal wote.
This experience was just the beginning of what was to be a continuous struggle for Malicha to be seen as just an ordinary Kenyan citizen. When he turned 18 years, the situation was the same.
Mimi nikienda nikaambiwa utaenda vetting. Nikauliza nenda aje vetting na niko na passport, because yote niko na confidence na shindwa naenda vetting, nishaienda. Process ilikuwa very simple and clear, because at least walikuwa na idea wazazi na mimi niko na idea wazazi. Niko na documents za shule. Niko na baadhi ya mzazi wangu, niko na baadhi yangu, niko na idea ya mom na dad, everything. And then bado mimi nilienda vetting.
While all this happened almost 16 years ago, nothing much has changed regarding what the society sees him as, especially in Kenya, where previous Al-Shabaab attacks have always seemingly kept the country on its toes.
Kwa sana nikitravel Garissa, kuna shughuli kunafanya more like trainings za resilience, more like resilient conflict, and then kuna some of the friends and colleagues, but tuko kwa Nissan tuna travel. But nakumbuka at the same time bado nikisimamishangu hapo hiyo border ya Garissa na Tana River, hiyo nini hapo, hiyo bridge, na kwa bado moja lini identify kama wewe kuna kitambulisho. Then bado unapata wao wote wakushuka kwa hiyo Nissan, lakini mimi nakumbuka nilishuka nikapeana kitambulisho.
According to Malicha, the root of the issue lies in how Muslims or anyone who looks like him are profiled. While names and identities are meant to provide a sense of belonging for people like him, they become weapons used against them. Instead of symbolizing heritage and identity, his name became a reason for suspicion, a justification for unequal treatment.
Watembea kwa street, and then hiyo time watu wanarealize, watu wanaanza kuita walalo waria. Hapo nilianza kuleta noma, because ilikuwa ni more like a conflict, because nilikuwa naambia hiyo mi boss, hata ile kivenye mimi najijua uwezi niita hivyo. Akaniambia unajua tunaona kila mtu anakaa, nyinyi ni waria. Nikamwambia kwa hivyo sisi wote tunakaa waria. Kwa hivyo sisi wote wenye tunakaa, ukiona mtu mweupe ana ndevu ni waria. Nikamwambia sisi wote si waria.
The term walalo, derived from walal, the Somali word for sibling, is commonly used to refer to Somalis in Kenya. For those who bear no origin or connection with Somalis in any way, the term can be derogatory, especially when used by non-Somalis. Words like this can be innocuous, not meant to be harmful or offensive, but they often acquire a dismissive undertone.
Waria ni different, ni tribe. Ni wenzetu na tuko nao kwa hii society, but huwezi muita pia Waria. Because the only thing unaweza niambia, ujui jina yangu niite we boss. Ama ni aje mjamaa. Jina tu yoyote unaweza ita mwenzako niite mimi.
This kind of profiling has led to the targeting of Muslims, and it continues to do so today.
Sasa tunaambiwa kisha kuwa Hassan Abdi, then it becomes sasa ule ni mtu ambaye anataka kuchunguzwa, bila kujali kwamba huyu mtu alizaliwa wapi. That now doesn't matter anymore.
Ile ukianzisha jina Halima, Mafatuma, Malima, inakuwa ni kero. Unaambo uende ukate ID Northeastern ama Garissa huko.
It is especially evident where there is a visible signifier of identity, and any stereotypes linked to that identity reveal just how entrenched the bias is.
The government of the Republic of Kenya. Kwanza wewe unatoka wapi? Who are you representing? Because if you are representing Al-Shabaab, I will not answer you. Which TV station? NTV. NTV. Yes, NTV is a good station, so I will answer you.
This is a country that has diversity of religion, culture, and ethnicity, and for us to be treated like this is very unfair.
But beyond all the discrimination and profiling that comes from bearing the name Mohammed or looking different, Malicha asks that someone's name alone should not be used to presume their entire identity.
Some of the names ilikuwa ina come out, Al-Shabaab si Waislamu, ni watu wameslimika, lakini jina zao unapata si jina zetu. Unapata kuna jina yake anaitwa maybe Kelvin somewhere Mutiso ama Kamau. Aufai tu ni harass mimi peke yangu niko na jina ya Kiislamu. Sisi wote Kenya tunafaa tukue culprit, because if Kenya imekuwa attacked, itakuwa attacked by mimi, but ama mwenye anatumia jina ya Kiislamu, but anyone anaweza kuwa anataki nchi.
Article 27 of the Constitution of Kenya guarantees equality and freedom from discrimination. It explicitly states that the state or any person shall not directly or indirectly discriminate against anyone on the grounds that include race, sex, pregnancy, marital status, health status, ethnic or social origin, color, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, dress, language, or birth. Additionally, Kenya is also a signatory to several international human rights treaties, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, as well as the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, among others. Still, discrimination remains pervasive across in Kenya, impacting access to education, employment, and other essential services for many. Stories like Malicha's and Penina's are evidence of the suffering that many Kenyans regularly go through when biases based on who they are, what they believe in, and where they are from are used against them.
I tried to vie for MCA at my rural place. Na wakaniambia they think I am not ready for it. One, they gave a reason of my age is young. 2, I'm not married. 3, I don't have a house yet.
Kwangu nakumbuka kuna wakati moja ndugu yangu alifariki. Wakati ile ndugu yangu alifariki hawakuweza kunijumulisha katika vikao ama kunijulisha haraka juu waliona kama sina kitu.
When we were young, we were not so much well off at home. And when we went to school, there was a teacher who really discriminated me because of my family background. She would even humiliate me in front of my fellow classmates. You know, at that time you are young, she's making other people laugh at you.
According to Dr. Benson Agai, a sociologist, having laws against discrimination is not enough. The society needs to adhere to them.
Policing culture is a very difficult thing. You cannot police somebody's heart or attitude, because people learn prejudice and discrimination. These are learned. Nobody is born knowing which gender to look down upon, but they are taught through association. That is called, we call it in social sciences, social learning. There's a theory of social learning. If you associate with people who do not respect values and the law, there is likelihood that you will also begin to disregard the law.
But if the constitutional national values of human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination and protection of the marginalized are anything to go by, Dr. Agaya says the normalization of discrimination in Kenya speaks volumes of how the country sees itself.
It is only on paper, but you don't see it manifested in our culture, in our attitudes, in our behavior. Different societies may do, communities in Kenya do, but at the national level, the overarching national values are not enacted.
According to the Discrimination Index released by Amnesty International Kenya in March 2024, that sheds light on the prevalent nature of discrimination in Kenyan society, social media platforms continue to serve as breeding grounds for harmful stereotypes and prejudices based on gender, sex, social and economic status.
And when you have discrimination starting at the family level, you can imagine it will always spread out to the community. Well, I'm not a psychologist, but there's always this thing that people say, childhood traumas that people project in adulthood.
What we spill out in social media, it originates from families, from communities, from the work world, from the political fields. And a lot of times this incendiary kind of language is built in the institutions of our society, in our workplaces, because the way you treat somebody because they don't belong to your community or your same background as a co-worker is what they will spill.
While discrimination often begins at home, Dr. Agaya insists that social relearning is possible. This is one of the ways that the Kenyan society can understand what discrimination is and fully unpack its impact on individuals and communities.
Social learning can be reversed, and then you use institutions that are very powerful. One of the powerful institutions of learning is education system. What do we teach? What values do we uphold?
Many victims of discrimination never speak out, even though it affects their quality of life. Amnesty International's Zaina Kombo admits that there is need for sensitization to address the issue at the core.
We need to go down to the ground, not just with one meeting, but consistently speak about discrimination, make people aware that whatever they're going through, those who are being discriminated, whatever they're going through is not something normal, that they need to speak out against it. And those who are seeing others being discriminated, they should speak for them.
Both Penina Kilunja and Muhammad Malicha have sort of developed a coping mechanism for all the discrimination they have gone through. For Penina, every new day is an opportunity for her to sow some more and to hopefully earn enough to make ends meet. For Malicha, his outlet is through engaging his community in Mathare to resolve conflicts and build resilience.
Ninasema watu wakae wakipendana, kwa sababu sisi zote tumeumbwa na mikono ya Mwenyezi Mungu.
Si rahisi as a young person you push because mo feel ni kama discrimination ni mimi na mimi ndio discrimination because nimeipitia.
Let's bring Article 27 to life, because Article 27 is more or less holistic. It speaks about almost 16 to 17 identities all in one article. So what we are saying is, let's bring all these scattered laws here and there. Let's bring them together into one piece of legislation that someone could easily access or go to, so that they know whatever type of discrimination I'm facing, either it will be Commission X that I can run to.
The struggle for equality and elimination of all forms of discrimination is not a matter of the law alone. So while Kenya has a powerful and progressive constitution, how can she move the needle forward on inclusion? For Penina, Malicha and others whose lives are defined by the harms that discrimination enables, this actively means creating a space where everyone feels valued, respected and empowered.
Do you care about truth, justice, and stories that really impact our lives?
Then, the Africa Uncensored community is where you belong.
What do you get when you join? Well,
early access to powerful investigations and a chance to contribute by making your voice heard in the stories that matter. A space to connect with people who care about accountability just like you.
Opportunities to share your thoughts, give feedback, and even tip us on stories that need to be told. Plus, events, trainings, screenings, all those things to keep you learning and engaged.
This isn't just about community, it's about telling the stories that shape Africa.
So, guys, join the Africa Uncensored community now and let's uncover the truth together.
Since June, Kenya has been rocked by protests led by young people over government corruption and a new finance bill.
Tax policy measures proposed in the Finance Bill 2024.
This bill, now abandoned, was going to raise taxes on Kenyan citizens to pay the country's debt. But protesters argued that the debt was the result of corruption and mismanagement, not low taxes. Public debt and corruption are deeply intertwined in Kenya. Maybe the biggest example is the Anglo leasing scandal. The case is 20 years old, but it's still a big deal in Kenya.
After more than a decade of probe and court cases, suspects in the multi-billion Anglo leasing scandal have been acquitted.
The scandal was exposed by anti-corruption Sir John Githongo in 2005. Offshore firms won 18 huge contracts to provide important government services, but without tenders and at inflated prices. Public officials and powerful businessmen were suspected of corruption. After years of court cases, some of the suspects were acquitted, but most were never even charged. Decades later, no one has been held fully accountable for the scandal. This was due in part to offshore secrecy. Many of the companies involved were registered in places like the British Virgin Islands, far away from Kenya. As a result, it was hard for Kenyan investigators to trace who really owned them. But journalists are still on the case. In our new investigation, thanks to the Pandora Papers leak of offshore records, we confirmed who owned the companies. Companies that received around $140 million in Kenyan public funds. Learn more about what we found and how this stayed hidden for so long.
Contention over new tax proposals that Kenyans say are punitive. Kenyans to voice their concerns about the Finance Bill 2024-2025.
Since June 18th, Kenya has seen widespread demonstrations, mainly led by the Generation Z against the Finance Bill 2024, which was perceived to impose harsh taxes on an already struggling populace.
Tax policy measures proposed in the Finance Bill 2024.
This bill, now abandoned, was presented as a solution to the country's public debt, which stands at 10.6 trillion shillings.
When we formulated the bill, it had 346 billion of new revenue.
However, Kenya's debt issues date back much further, part of it coinciding with the birth of many of today's protesters. Around that time, a major corruption scandal was unfolding.
No, all corruption scandals must be kept alive. Anglo-Leasing has taken 20 years. Goldenberg has been with us for more than 32 years. It doesn't mean that we stop talking about them, because we need to keep them alive until we get justice.
Public debt and corruption are deeply intertwined in Kenya's history, often making for considerable highlights in presidential campaigns. While borrowing is not inherently detrimental, imprudent borrowing and corruption have long drained Kenya's resources, hindering sustainable growth.
So say you get a debt, you get money, you take out a loan, and you are going to buy a house for yourself. But instead of using the loan to buy your house, you go and gamble with it.
One notable example is the Anglo-Leasing scandal, a decades-old but undying case that has come to be used as a case study of state capture.
The beauty of time, especially when it comes to the Anglo-Leasing saga, is that it gives room for perspective.
This is 2015.
The name Kamani has for over a decade been synonymous with the multi-billion shillings Anglo-Leasing scandal, and for the Kamani brothers Deepak and Rashmi, together with their father Chaman Lal.
This is 2024.
After more than a decade of probe and court cases, suspects in the multi-billion Anglo-Leasing scandal have been acquitted.
Over 2 decades after the lid was blown off one of Kenya's most infamous scandals,
the executives attempt to push the National Assembly to approve a 1.4 billion shilling payment to Anglo-Leasing companies has stalled.
life has not fully ebbed out of the scandal that transcended the Moi regime, stealing its way into the Kibaki regime.
Deepak Kamani was arraigned in court with 2 of his relatives to face various charges related to the multi-billion shilling scam.
In January this year, the Kamanis, a family implicated in the scandal, were acquitted alongside 3 others, seemingly blowing into oblivion the remaining wisps of life in the ghosts of the scandal. But first, let us get a context of what the Anglo-Leasing scandal was.
He lifted the lid to the infamous decade-long Anglo-Leasing scam.
I only knew of the passport printing, only to come and discover that the thing was worth $230 million.
Tabling an investigative report on the shady dealings on printing of passports at the then Ministry of Home Affairs.
The intrigues of 18 alleged irregular contracts, some allegedly awarded to phantom companies, were unveiled in 2005 by then Governance and Ethics Permanent Secretary John Githongo.
2006 was the year stories about corruption in Kenya dominated the news. John Githongo released more damaging information about the Anglo-Leasing scandal that had forced President Mwai Kibaki to relieve former Minister for Transport Chris Murungaru of his job the previous year. Githongo's revelations would force Finance Minister David Muraria to resign.
In his report to then President Mwai Kibaki, he referred to some of the companies awarded these contracts as non-existent. Between 1997 and 2004, the government of Kenya signed at least 18 contracts amounting to over 56.3 billion shillings at the time. The contracts were for the supply of security equipment and services at various police departments, communication and satellite equipment, an oceanographic survey vessel, and passport printing equipment in what came to be famously known as the Anglo-Leasing type contracts. The Anglo-Leasing case was not without its challenges, given that it spanned 2 administrations and multiple countries. As Sheila Masinde, the head of programs at Transparency International, explains.
This case was also quite interesting because it involved or occurred between 2 regimes. It started in the Moi era where initial payments were made, I think about 900 million. And then when the Kibaki team took over, the respective ministers, and this particular scandal cut across several ministries. But the fact that it cuts across two regimes just tells you that corruption knows no political divide.
Chief Magistrate Felix Kombo on 19th January ruled that the prosecution's evidence failed to prove that the Kamanis were beneficial owners of either Soundday or Apex Corporation, two companies they are linked to that were implicated in the scandal. Moreover, Chief Magistrate Kombo noted that the prosecution was susceptible to allegations of selective and malicious prosecution, since some of the people involved in the scandal were never charged, and that the payments made to Soundday by the government were legal.
As already seen, the SCA was validated by opinion of the Attorney General and cannot by any stretch be described as a purported contract. It was a binding contract between the GOK and Soundday.
A dossier by John Githongo detailing the scandal implicated among others businessman Jimmy Wanjigi, Anura Pereira, the Kamanis, and the late President Mwai Kibaki said Alfred Gitonga. True to Magistrate Kombo's ruling, some of those implicated were never charged. Although Deepak Kamani and Rashmi Kamani were acquitted, together with their father Chamanlal Kamani posthumously, over what the magistrate termed inexplicable cherry-picking and the lack of evidence linking them as beneficial owners to Soundday Corporation and Apex Finance, documents in opposition may show this missing link. A letter dated 15th June 2012, written by the director of the Financial Investigation Agency in the British Virgin Islands to a law firm Alcogal, requests for information on the beneficial owners of Anglo Leasing Finance Limited and Apex Finance International Corporation. At the time, Aleman Cordero Galindo and Lee, Alcogal, was the law firm representing Apex as its registered agent, before it resigned this representation in October 2010. Apex Finance was financing Soundday in the execution of 3 of the 5 contracts it was awarded. Both companies were enjoined with the accused in the case against the Kamanis. In response to the Financial Investigation Agency director's letter, Alcogal's money laundering reporting officer responded with a letter listing Deepak and Rashmi Kamani as the beneficial owners of Apex Finance and Anglo Leasing and Finance International Limited. A corporate directory search conducted by Alcogal showed that Deepak, Rashmi and Chamanlal Kamani were directors at Apex Finance from January 8, 1998 to October 25, 2001, when they all ceased to be directors. Leaked correspondence between investigators and the registered agents of Apex Finance suggests that the Kamanis were at one point directors of Apex Finance and were, at least in 2012, the beneficial owners of Apex.
It is not clear where some of these monies ended up, because most of these companies that were named or that were given these contracts, is it 18 or about 18 contracts or so, were actually fictitious company. They were ghost companies, briefcase companies, yeah, and some, of course, going to other shadowy companies and individuals, and that is why that money has never come back to Kenya. And it is a lesson in terms of beneficial ownership transparency, which is a practice that we are now pushing for in Kenya.
Another name behind some of the companies implicated in the Anglo Leasing scandal was Anura Pereira.
Anura Pereira, a Sri Lankan who is said to have come to Kenya in the 80s, controlled the other 5 contracts worth 13 billion shillings.
And while the Kamanis were prosecuted and later acquitted in a court case that lasted nearly a decade, Pereira was never prosecuted. According to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission's Deputy Chief Executive Officer, Abdi Mohamud, it was only prudent at the time to go for the big fish.
These were 18 contracts. What the ESCC initially investigated was 6 contracts. And out of the 6, 4 were presented in court. Of course, what happens is when you have huge investigations that involve, many companies, some of them based outside, you wouldn't have the capacity to investigate all of them at a time.
The Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, now Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, at the time listed Pereira top among persons under investigation, terming him the organizer of the corruption scheme. Leaked classified US Embassy cable described Pereira as the mastermind of the Anglo-leasing scheme. In yet another cable, his visa privileges had been permanently revoked under US Proclamation 7750, which restricts entry of persons, including those associated with corruption, into the US. So, just who is Anura Leslie Pereira and how was he involved in the Anglo-leasing scandal? According to US intelligence in 2006, it was unclear what kind of passport Pereira carried or what nationality he was traveling under. The US Embassy cable states that Pereira is very difficult to trace and has proven a formidable adversary for law enforcement personnel. OCCRP and Africa Uncensored investigations may have uncovered more information on 6 of the companies linked to Anura Pereira that were directly connected to the Anglo-leasing scandal. Euromarine Industries Incorporated, Empresa do Financas International Limited, Naviga Capital Corporation, First Mercantile Securities Corporation, Universal Satspace, and Sierra Systems Incorporated. 5 of these companies were set up in the British Virgin Islands, a secrecy jurisdiction or tax havens, are places with laws that provide financial secrecy enabling non-residents to hide assets and avoid taxes. However, at the time of signing of the contracts, the addresses of these companies, aside from Universal Satspace, were indicated in countries other than where they were incorporated. The companies were incorporated in the BVI by design. Atia Waris, Professor of Fiscal Law and Policy at the University of Nairobi and a UN independent expert on foreign debt, explains how illicit financial flows in secrecy jurisdictions may affect economies.
The effect of a secrecy jurisdiction or a tax haven, I mean, depending on what phrase you use, is that as long as they exist and as long as they allow the receipt of money without question into their economies, first you lose the economy, the value of movement of currency and circulation of money in that economy. And now it's moving into this other economy. So the other economy is going to get stronger and this one's going to get weaker because the money is not disappearing, right? It's moving jurisdiction, as it were. The problem is that if countries accept money that have come from corrupt means, they benefit from it and then they don't question it. And there have been many incidents where, for example, countries have said, oh, leader X released money, we knew it's not possible, so we've frozen the money.
Besides using secrecy jurisdictions to hide the nature of his companies, Pereira masked this connection to these companies by having them registered as shareholders in each other and transferring their directorships using bearer shares, a form of secretive ownership in which whoever has possession of the paper document owns the shares in the company. This type of ownership was so controversial that it was banned in Switzerland in 2019.
Bearer shares are very interesting. There are a couple of countries in the world that still have bearer shares. I'm not sure why they developed the way in which they developed, but they developed in this sense. I own a business and then I pass away or I want to sell my company and make it super easy. I have a bearer share which basically identifies the business and then I just hand it over and keep walking, right? And you pay me for it. They developed so long ago and they've existed for so long, but you also don't know where they've moved, how they've transferred, if they're still in one country or another. And it's one thing to know, I'm a barber and you're a barber and I hand over my bearer share to you. The problem becomes when I create a company, say, to give a certain service, like I'm going to be a consultant and I have a bearer share on it, and then I hand it over to a consultant in another country. There isn't a track and trace system to say, a person from this country now holds that bearer share, as opposed to where the share is registered and sort of brought into creation, as it were.
Pereira intricately concealed his connection to the 6 companies, effectively removing his and his wife's name from the paperwork just as the Anglo-leasing scandal was taking shape. Let us take a closer look at the 6 companies and Pereira's link to them. Euromarine was the company contracted in a contract dated July 2003 to supply an oceanographic survey vessel to the Ministry of Defense. This project was to be jointly funded by Euromarine Industries, Empresa do Financas, and Navigia Capital International Limited. Empresa and Navigia both had the Pereiras on their paperwork as directors between 2002 to 2004 and 2003 to 2004, respectively, after which both companies put nominee directors until 2009.
Euromarine Industries, which was contracted by the government to provide security naval vessels, now becomes the latest company to obtain High Court orders barring the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission from investigating it.
The Commission is barred from seeking or giving mutual legal assistance, and thus its investigations, particularly those with international dimensions, are wholly paralyzed.
The companies were then consolidated and made subsidiaries of Euromarine. In 2009, after the 3 companies won a petition to bar the Kenyan government from investigating them, Pereira appeared as the ultimate shareholder of all 3 companies. Universal Satspace was incorporated in Delaware, USA, and was contracted to deliver broadband equipment and internet services to the Kenya Postal Service, only 2 months after its incorporation. The company was awarded $28.1 million for the project. In July 2006, after the Anglo-leasing scandal had blown up, Universal Satspace sued the Kenyan government in London for non-payment of the contract and won. The Kenyan government was forced to settle, paying the company 705 million shillings in 2014 in order to secure a Eurobond loan.
We are faced with a challenge that myself and the majority of Kenyans believe we should not be paying. The courts have deemed that we must pay. We have gone to the highest level, including appealing it, and we have been told again we must pay.
Pereira's connection to Universal Satspace was revealed in 2015 when he signed for its dissolution. Just like Navigia, Euromarine, and Empresa, First Mercantile Security Corporation was also incorporated using bearer shares. The company was listed as the funder for SpaceNet Corporation in the provision of broadband communication equipment and was awarded about $11.8 million. The director of First Mercantile was initially A&G Trading, a company that was also incorporated using bearer shares, but had Anura and his wife Gazala registered as directors in 2002. The company also seems to bear their initials, A and G. In 2002, a person by the name Christos Koumbis was appointed director. He also appears as a nominee director of Empresa do Financas International. In 2007, Anura Pereira became the sole shareholder of the company, but was replaced by a namesake company, First Mercantile Securities Incorporated, in 2010. He, however, repossessed the shares in 2017. A register of directors signed by Anura lists him as the sole director of First Mercantile Securities. The company also sued the Kenyan government for a terminated contract and was paid 722 million shillings.
Wanataka kutulazimisha tulipe hiyo pesa, na tumesema kama tutalipa hiyo pesa lazima wananchi wa Kenya wajue ni mambo gani inaendelea, na ndio sababu tumepeleka mambo haya bunge.
Mr. Thuge is just being smart.
1.4 billion shillings paid in a single transaction for 2 companies, Universal Satspace and First Mercantile Securities Corporation, both said to belong to Anura Pereira.
The directive was for immediate payment. The payment was made, the value date on Monday, and it was made to the beneficiary bank. It was NatWest Bank, and the amounts were made to, the account name was Travers Smith.
Another company associated with Pereira, Sierra Systems, was awarded $41.8 million in the Anglo-leasing type contracts.
As if 1.4 billion shillings is not enough, the government is trying at clearing public coffers of 3.5 billion shillings more on Anglo-leasing type contracts.
The contract was for the supply of security equipment at the National Intelligence Service and was denoted as Project Flagstaff. The company was incorporated only 3 months before it was awarded this contract. Pereira's connection to Sierra Systems only became apparent in 2010 when he exercised the power of attorney to open a Dubai bank account for the company through another BVI entity, Pan Pacific Trustees Limited. An analysis of the corporate records showed that Pereira actively obscured his connections to these companies as the investigations unfolded. He only put his name on the companies in 2007 to 2009 after investigations by Kenyan, UK and Swiss authorities wound down. Additionally, our investigations revealed that these connections form a complex network linking at least 60 companies, 20 people, 5 trusts and 1 organization, all appearing to lead back to Anura Pereira.
If you have 60 companies with 1 or 2 people working in each of them, but they're just pushing paper, then why are they really there? Because if there's no economic activity taking place, they shouldn't be there. But the way the world is structured with these, I think there are about 90 plus secrecy jurisdictions in the world, is that you can now strategize this sort of web of companies so that you're paying less in some and so you're balancing it out. So no, the numbers is not the problem. It is if they're actually doing a task. And unfortunately, there are a lot of accusations of companies having what are called post box companies, right? So literally the only thing you have in a country is a PO box, and the mail goes into the PO box, and once a week or once a month somebody comes and empties the mail and then forwards it to the next country.
This intricate web of paper pushing entities raises significant questions about the legitimacy of their activities. In 2006, 4 shell companies and 2 trusts were set up in the Cook Islands, while a foundation was set up in Panama, all with links to the Pereira family. In 2009, $2.5 million was moved from the Cook Island companies to one of the Pereira-linked trusts, Regency Trust. In a letter to the Regency Trust signed by Ghazala Pereira, Pereira's wife, she instructs the trust to borrow $1 million from the Churchill Trust and advance the same amount to her as a loan. Another $1 million was advanced to Pereira's wife towards the completion of a private equity investment in a hotel in Ukraine. This was not the only such request for funds from Ghazala. Between 2011 and 2013, more than $11 million was moved between the Pereira-linked Regency and Churchill Trusts and the Cook Island company set up in 2006. More than $9 million of these appear to have been paid to Pereira's wife and son. Leaked documents show a complex series of transactions with a revolving cast of actors that will emerge, wait for their turn to act, and then fade into the background. One such actor is corporate trustee Wagner International Limited, established in New Zealand at the end of 2015 to act for Regency Trust. Regency Trust had been created in 2006 by Anura Pereira and also registered in New Zealand. In 2009, Regency accepted loans from Newford, Rockford, Stafford, and Trafford, companies solely owned by the Churchill Trust, another trust operated on behalf of Pereira, registered in the Cook Islands, where bank secrecy is the norm. Regency Trust also advanced a loan of $2.4 million to Anura's wife, Ghazala Pereira. Rockford, Stafford, and Trafford were dissolved in September 2013. In March 2017, Wagner cancelled all the loans that the companies had lent it before they were wound up, and the last character in this intriguing set of events, Newford, closed in April 2017. These intricate financial maneuvers resembled a high-stakes poker game where funds were shuffled between accounts with the finesse of a seasoned player. It was as if money was borrowed from one pocket, only to be slipped into the other, with debts curiously disappearing in the process. The incorporation of some Pereira-linked companies in secrecy jurisdictions not only provided a secure veil for the seemingly questionable transactions, but also the possibility of tax avoidance. One may wonder why then such structures continue to exist. According to Atia Waris, more robust regulation may help in the control of illicit financial flows.
There is a global push to stop them from existing and to try and regulate them. But the reason that they exist is because every country in the world is sovereign and have a right to develop their own laws and regulations. Not only that, tax collection is considered to be a domestic issue. So there's no cross-border enforcement of tax liabilities. There are so many elements of finance that are moving around unregulated right now, including private debt also. Public debt is partially regulated, but private debt is not. And we need a place where people can go and say, hey, this is happening, and how do we resolve it in a fair and equitable manner? That space does not exist in the world right now. So there is no consensus on how to take it forward.
The Anglo-leasing scandal shook Kenya's economy to its core, with aftershocks still reverberating decades later. The fact that many of those implicated, whether never charged or acquitted, remain tight-lipped about this festering wound speaks volumes of how deeply its roots ran.
The majority of high-level corruption-related prosecutions, unfortunately, do not succeed.
However, the scheme was not without its lessons. Both EACC's Abdi Mohamud and Transparency International's Sheila Masinde agree on one thing: crimes never expire.
These crimes do not expire. We have learned a lot from the cases that we have presented in court so far, and we intend to use the lessons learned to also file new matters in court.
Hi, my name is Calvin Rock, a reporter and fact-checker at Africa Uncensored. Thank you for watching this video to this point. You are our #1 supporter and we value you. To maintain our independence and be able to bring you balanced and in-depth pieces, we are asking for your financial support. Become a member on our channel or support us through Patreon. The link is right on your screen or in the video description below. Or you can send us M-Pesa directly through the instructions on your screen or below. Cheers.
Back then, lending was very strict. With time, we have seen access to credit made easy.
Professor is the way to go, guys.
Zenka Loan App.
Technology has brought us money close to us.
Juu ni easy to access, haihitaji guarantor.
Zile terms zinakuja ni pages mingi. Utascroll tu mbio mbio, uklik agree and continue.
Unapewa wiki 2 ya kurudisha au kuongezi muda.
After 5 second message nyingine, after 10 minutes message zilikuwa zinafanya mtu anakuwa uncomfortable.
Sasa hii unapigiwa hata unaweza receive. Nataka nikuweke mahali hata uwezi chukua simu ina hangi ilipuke.
Sasa umejua ukiwa na mtandao, wakati ule walikuona umejivaa tu kawaida, ukiwa na mtandao huwezi jua ni wewe.
The digital lending app revolution has swept through Kenya.
Professor is the way to go, guys.
Zenka Loan App.
Promising quick and easy access to cash.
Hizi za mobile banking nimeenda kwa mara 2.
Hizi pressures za uko na shida, uko na emergency, ndio unapata ukichukua loan at that given time inakukula baadaye.
Juu ni easy to access, haihitaji guarantor.
But for many, this convenience has turned into a nightmare.
Sasa hii unapigiwa hata unaweza receive. Nataka nikuweke mahali hata uwezi chukua simu ina hangi ilipuke.
Especially when they fail to pay.
Wacha sisi tuendelee kupigia simu juu ndo maamua.
From digital and physical threats to financial ruin and mental anguish, this story paints a stark picture of the predatory nature of these services.
Hata nikija huku town, nao pia naweza kutana nao wamenijua, wanishike hata kwa njia, wanifanyie kitu kibaya.
Inafanya mpaka pressure yangu wanga inapanda na kuanga na pressure. Nilipata pressure juu hizi masimu, hizi pesa za simu.
It also looks into the regulatory challenges and potential solutions to combat this growing crisis.
How many people are able to go through those terms of reference?
Let's first begin by asking ourselves, is it safe to borrow from this particular institution? Is it something that is necessary? You know, am I able to repay?
There's a famous Swahili saying that goes, kukopa harusi, kulipa matanga. This saying analogizes borrowing to a wedding and payment of loans to a funeral. With the influx of digital lending apps in Kenya, the famous saying also speaks to a living and active reality of many entrapped in a web of an enticing but expensive promise of financial inclusion.
Mimi hufanya tu easy casual work. Kufulia watu, kubebea watu maji. Kazi tu yani yenye inaweza tu nipea pesa yenye itaweza sustain watoto.
Life has not been easy for Asha Hassan, a resident of Soweto East in Kibra, Nairobi's biggest slum.
Mimi before nilikuwa nafanya biashara. So nilikuwa nimeweka tu biashara yangu vizuri ya kuuza juice, alafu napika food napeleka pale A&M. But ikafika point niko na watoto 3. Hao watoto wakakuja wakaingia, 2 wako secondary na wewe mmoja ako primary.
Asha says providing for her family single-handedly took a toll on her, and she had to find a way to make ends meet after her business collapsed.
So wakati ile kazi iliisha, ikabidi nikipata hata kazi hata kwa mimi mjengo nishawaifanya. Nafanya hapo, ukipata pesa hiyo wiki unapeleka. Ujue kwa chakula umekopa ndio at least usukume deni ya school fees. Wakati mwalimu aliniambia watoto sasa wanataka kufanya mtihani, na ujue sasa mtoto kama wa form 4 anahitaji kwetu shuleni fully.
The desperate need to keep her children in school drove Asha to apply for a loan from a digital lender in January this year, and this is when her troubles began.
Nilikopa 15,000. February wakanipigia simu wakaniambia nafaa kuanza kulipa. So na wakaniambia hiyo siku yenye wamenipigia ndio nafaa kulipa. Nikamwambia sina pesa lakini nitatafuta kitu by the end of the day. Wakaniambia wangoje the end of the day.
According to Asha, the entire year 2024 has been a nightmare due to numerous calls she receives demanding that she pays the loan.
Kwa kupiga simu ndio walikuwa wananiambia tutakuja kukushika, tutakutrace mpaka mahali unakaa. So kwanza tu wakati waliniambia hivyo nilikuwa naishi na uoga. Kila time hata mtu akipiga kuna namba zilikuwa zinanipigia si watu lakini ilifika point sishiki. Juu sasa naona tu ni watu ndio ikanifanya nikachoka juu sasa hizo simu mpaka messages. After 5 second message nyingine, after 10 minutes yani zilikuwa zinafanya mtu anakuwa uncomfortable.
Asha's experience resonates with many Kenyans attracted to digital lending services by both the allure of quick and unsecured loans channeled through the mobile money transfer service M-Pesa.
We have moved from the Stone Age, just like human being evolved. Back then, lending was very strict. However, with time we have seen access to credit made easy. Also the banks stopping being very rigid, but also introduction of, we can call them the good online or mobile lending. But we have also seen a vast growth in the online lending that has really come out to almost close some doors for some banks which are not very strong.
In its statement to the press, released on October 1st, 2024, the Central Bank of Kenya announced the licensing of an additional 27 digital credit providers from 7 DCPs licensed in June the same year. This brings the number of mobile loan applications allowed to legally operate in Kenya to 85, with CBK in the process of reviewing more applications. According to the statement, CBK has received more than 730 DCP applications for licensing since March 2022. Ann Kihagi, a finance expert who has close to 2 decades experience in working in the banking sector, attributes this influx of digital lending services to several factors, among them the speed with which these loans get approvals.
Technology has brought us money close to us by almost removing all those, the time, the stringent requirement, and also approval from so many people. Like you would imagine, like if you have an issue with a group member, they would not approve your loan. So, but with the digital lending, it is my phone, my bank, or the person lending me, and the money that I need.
This and the high cost of living has made digital lending apps a quick source of refuge for many, especially the low and middle income earners.
All you need is your Play Store. Uko nayo?
Unakam tu hapa kwa Play Store.
In addition, the easy access to these loans on the widely used Google App Store and constant and relatable advertising by popular influencers via different social media platforms has made digital lending an attractive venture.
So they have made it so appealing. And definitely, if I bring food close to you when you're hungry, the demand for that food, your body will definitely react to it. But there are many things that we don't look into, which could be the reason why, no matter how much they are bringing in money close to us when we need it, we also have to be very, very careful.
Mental health ilikuanga iko disturbed kabisa because najua sasa ile simu ikilia ni ile wasiwasi. Hata hiyo uko na a very important call lakini sasa jiona ambapo hujai save unakosa kuchukua alafu unakuja unapata ilikuwa something ikusaidie.
Margaret Kamuru, also a resident of Kibra, shares her experience with a digital lending app after she failed to pay a loan of 35,000 shillings.
So nikichukua for that purpose ilikuanga just to fit my needs in my campus life. Because kuna zile vitu zenye nilikuwa nahitaji zifanyike na so ikabidi sana nichukue hiyo loan. Sasa ndio at least ni buy phone, ni change vitu. That's how nilianza nayo tukagrow nao, but ilifika pali kakuwa ngumu.
According to Kihagi, the desperate need for instant financial solutions makes it even harder for borrowers to read and understand the terms of these loans.
There are things that are written called terms and conditions that many people do not read. So we will first blame the borrower because they have seen a pop out. There is need for money. They do not read or query how credible. They don't even ask around. You make an application and you get your money. Okay,
unajua sasa ukichukua loan kwa mobile app, zile terms zinakuja ni pages mingi. Na we at that given time uko na haja ya do. So uta scroll tu mbio mbio, uklik agree and continue, na hata hujasoma hizo terms. So kitu lini attract ni ati ilikuwa very easy to access. You know, kitu lini attract na terms and condition hata sikusoma.
For many borrowers, this means being unknowingly subjected to high interest rates which become difficult to pay back.
Ni venye pia hawa wataki kutu understand. Ukieleza mtu hauna kazi, yeye hataki kukuunderstand. Ukimweleza biashara iko chini, hawataki kukuunderstand. Wanakupea pressure like unataka tu kusikia kukufa.
The same social media platforms used to market these digital lending services are also awash with harrowing tales from thousands of loan defaulters. This private Facebook group called Loan App Victims Kenya, for example, was created 2 years ago as a support group for those who have experienced harassment from digital lenders. One of the most prominent complaints is that this harassment extends to family and friends of borrowers in an attempt to pressure defaulters to pay.
One of the things that is criminal, and I would really feel bad that some of the institutions that are supposed to safeguard Kenyans, maybe they are not doing their work right, is that your data is shared, even where you have never ever shared your ID number or your name or your phone number. Someone will write you a message telling you that, you know, we offer this kind of loan. So your data is never safe.
While lack of digital safety and constant debt shaming are common problems facing defaulters of digital lending apps, these threats have brought a unique challenge of physical harm and tangible danger. Sunrise in Kisumu signals the start of a beautiful day. Every morning, the promise of productive activities ebb from the magnificent shores of Lake Victoria to the streets of the city. But for this resident, whom we will call Halima to protect her identity, this city remains a bittersweet memory.
Kukuja town, saa zingine nikija town huwa nakuja na buibui na mtandio. Yeah. Hata leo asubuhi vile nilikuwa nakuja, nimekuja na buibui na mtandio, hali nimeiacha tu hapo mahali nilikuwa nimeenda kufanya kazi. Sasa umejua ukiwa na mtandio wakati ule
Humans are complex with multiple layers and characteristics that combine to form a whole that is often difficult to define. What happens when This is a story of what occurs when someone's identity becomes the basis for negative, even hurtful sentiments that are then enforced by society, effectively barring them from the right to a dignified life.
Mahali nimekaa watu hawezi kukaa pamoja na hawezi kunikaribia.
We used to be told if you're HIV positive, you're not supposed to give birth. That is why they sterilized us.
These headlines are only the tip of the iceberg. Behind them are lives defined by a constant fight for dignity.
Because in certain areas we've been to, I think this was Nakuru County, we had people speak of, oh, we had floods affecting us, but it's only a certain area where people got support because we were told our votes has Jai Gorogoro.
While We the People of Kenya is the opening line of the preamble to the Constitution of Kenya, the reality in the society we live in is there are many who are left out due to a variety of systemic issues. And for these people, the weight of discrimination is a burden they carry in silence. What lies beneath is the untold story of those whose rights are denied.
whose humanity is questioned and whose worth is overlooked. Humans are complex with multiple layers and characteristics that combine to form a whole that is often difficult to define. However, discrimination, the unjust treatment of individuals on the grounds of ethnicity, age, gender, sexual orientation, or disability status, is an injustice that reduces these complex factors to singular traits that are deemed undesirable, pushing its victims to the fringes of society, often with no way to advocate for themselves. What happens when something you can't change about yourself is deemed by others to be undesirable?
Najua niko na upofu. Kama ni size 1, kama ni size 2, nina seti. Alafu naanza kuweka usi namna hii.
This is a story of what occurs when someone's identity becomes the basis for negative, even hurtful sentiments that are then enforced by society, effectively barring them from the right to a dignified life.
Ukishaitwa Mohamed, tayari wewe ni culprit nje.
Mahali nimekaa, watu hawezi kukaa pamoja na hawezi kunikaribia.
Discrimination comes in many forms. For some, it is the daily struggle to be seen as equal and deserving of the same rights. For others, it is the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of prejudice that is hard to break out of.
We used to be told if you're HIV positive, you're not supposed to give birth. That is why they sterilized us.
These headlines are only the tip of the iceberg. Behind them are lives defined by a constant fight for dignity.
People learn prejudice and discrimination. These are learned. Nobody is born knowing which gender to look down upon, but they are taught.
While We the People of Kenya is the opening line of the preamble to the Constitution of Kenya, the reality in the society we live in is there are many who are left out due to a variety of systemic issues. And for these people, the weight of discrimination is a burden they carry in silence. What lies beneath is the untold story of those whose rights are denied, whose humanity is questioned, and whose worth is overlooked. In Kilungu Makueni, Eastern Kenya, just 110 kilometers from the country's capital, Nairobi, is where the hills rise endlessly and the land whispers of simplicity. Just like any other rural village in Kenya, tucked within this winding hill is Penina Kilunja, whose life is anything but simple.
Siendangi kwa njua. Hata kama nataka chakula kwa njua ninavumilia. Yaani kama nataka chakula kutoka kwa shamba, ninasema hapana. Sitaenda na hiyo njua.
Her skin carries flecks of black melanin. Her eyelashes, pale as if covered by dust, shield eyes that have learned to look away from the stares of others.
Kwa kupitia mimbile yangu, nilikuwa na shida ya kukaa na watu kwa wengi, yani kwa wingi wa watu, kwa sababu watu wanakaa wakiniongoza. Nikienda mahali kuna watu wanasonga songa. Kwa sababu wananiona mimi si mtu wa kawaida.
Penina's skin condition is a mystery that elicits fear and superstition. Her condition is genetic, but the fact that she looks so different from everyone in her community means that she is often isolated.
Ni kitu inafanyika kutoka niwe mtoto mdogo kabla ya kwenda shule. Nilikuwa wakati mwingine nikidhulumiwa na watu na kupigwa na kuvutwa hata nywele. Nikiitwa kama mzungu.
While some societies have come to recognize people with albinism as they truly are, whole, vibrant and human, there are still places where their existence is seen as an anomaly.
Na sasa ninafurahi.
Now, at 60 years of age, Penina has learned to take her condition in stride, but she is still aware of how she is seen by those around her. She, however, loves to sew. It is her quiet refuge. It is not just a skill, but a part of her.
Ninaenjoy sana hii kazi yangu. Hii kitambaa nilishona mwaka wa 1987. Na nilifunzwa kushona hii kitambaa na sister wa Consolata kutoka upande wa Italy. Na akatuambia tutie bidii. Tushone mingi ikujiwe na Wahindi kutoka kaunti ya Nairobi.
This is the sewing machine the Catholic sisters gifted her soon after she dropped out of school after her certificate of primary education CPE. While she has trained other women to sew, she has had to deal with insults and other forms of humiliation.
Mtu anakuja ananiuliza, unaweza kunifunza? Mimi ninakubali. Lakini nikianza kumfunza, ananiambia ataniletea pesa. Saa ingine ananiletea pesa kidogo. Saa ingine ananiletea chakula. Na ninaendelea na maisha yakiwa magumu.
Despite her formal training and the valuable skills she brings, Penina finds that society only sees her as a poor, uneducated widow with a disability. All these labels she carries like an invisible weight has come to shape every interaction she has, a reminder of every opportunity she has been denied, all reinforcing the layers of discrimination she faces daily.
Kazi yangu ni mzuri sana. Lakini nikishona fulana na nikipeleka pale kwa soko, watu hawezi kuninunulia. Wanaongoza kunikaribia.
Penina's story is not unique. It is the daily reality for millions facing a similar existence, a lens that magnifies the intolerance caused by multiple factors such as poverty, disability, gender, age, ethnicity, and even religion, which converge to create barriers that seem insurmountable.
Because in certain areas we've been to, I think this was Nakuru County, we had people speak of, we had floods affecting us, but it's only a certain area where people got support because we were told our votes as Jai Gorogoro.
Zaina Kombo has interacted with communities across Kenya as an equality and non-discrimination campaign manager at Amnesty International Kenya. One worrying trend, she says, is the normalization of such biases and discrimination in the country.
We really have to dig deep and see this as a national issue, as something that threatens not just individual families or individual beings, but also our cohesion as a country.
A report by Amnesty International Kenya, published in November 2023, identified persons living in poverty, the youth, persons with disabilities, and the elderly as being the most vulnerable and least protected against discrimination in the country.
When we start profiling each other in those boxes of the various identities that we have other than a human being, then we start feeling, we start feeling entitled over the rest of us. And that's dangerous because, for instance, when you have high crime rates, and this is also connected to, I could dare say, extremism. Because the moment you're rejected by your family, you're rejected by your community, you start looking for those groups that will give you a sense of belonging.
For vulnerable individuals, the consequences can be far-reaching, especially when their fear of being targeted becomes ingrained in their daily life.
A lot of time niko natumia jina za mtaa. Unafaa una jina at least zile za mtaa unapewa kama Fuaya. Unaitwa nani? Naitwa Fuaya. Time utajua jina yangu labda ni time umeinteract na mimi sana, ndio kama naitwa Mohamed Malicha. But time mingi unapata natumia jina Fuaya kama one of the survival of the identification, because time mob nilikuwa na feel jina zetu zinafanya na identification yetu inakuwa a lot of questions.
Mohamed Malicha knows what it means to bear a Muslim name in Kenya and look like what society has often described as an outsider.
nikiwakilisha Kenya in Commonwealth Youth Games. Ilikuwa 2008 Pune, ilikuwa India. And then nakumbuka hiyo time ilikuwa the team supposed to travel, and then ikakuwa mimi baki, but team ikaweza kubaki, and then nikapelekwa vetting ndio niweze kupata passport hiyo time. Nikandanganya hiyo house 7th floor. Nikapata nilikuwa ni sisi wote, lakini nikapata ni mimi peke yangu. But nilikuwa that cautious sana, nikauliza kwa nini mimi peke yangu niko hapa? Nikaambiwa wewe sababu ya jina yako. Ikunifurahisha because you know time nilianza kurealize tuko equal wote.
This experience was just the beginning of what was to be a continuous struggle for Malicha to be seen as just an ordinary Kenyan citizen. When he turned 18 years, the situation was the same.
Mimi nikienda nikaambiwa utaenda vetting. Nikauliza nenda aje vetting na niko na passport. Because yote niko na confidence na shindwa naenda vetting, nishaienda. Process yao ilikuwa very simple and clear because at least walikuwa na idea wazazi na mimi niko na idea wazazi. Niko na documents za shule. Niko na baadhi ya mzazi wangu, niko na baadhi yangu, niko na idea ya mom na dad, everything. And then bado mimi nilienda vetting.
While all this happened almost 16 years ago, nothing much has changed regarding what the society sees him as, especially in Kenya, where previous Al-Shabaab attacks have always seemingly kept the country on its toes.
Kwa sana nikitravel Garissa kuna shughuli kunafanya more like trainings za resilience, more like resilient conflict, and then niko na some of the friends and colleagues, but tuko kwa Nissan tuna travel. But nakumbuka at the same time bado nikisimamishangu hapo hiyo border ya Garissa na Tana River, hiyo nini hapo hiyo bridge, na bado mmoja alini identify kama wewe kuna kitambulisho. And then bado unapata wao wote wakushuka kwa hiyo Nissan, lakini mimi nakumbuka nilishuka nikapeana kitambulisho.
According to Malicha, the root of the issue lies in how Muslims or anyone who looks like him are profiled. While names and identities are meant to provide a sense of belonging for people like him, they become weapons used against them. Instead of symbolizing heritage and identity, his name became a reason for suspicion, a justification for unequal treatment.
Watembea kwa street, and then hiyo time watu wanarealize watu wanaanza kuita walalo waria. Hapo nilianza kuleta noma. Because ilikuwa ni more like a conflict, because niko naambia hiyo mi boss, hata ile kivenye mimi najijua uwezi niita hivyo. Akaniambia unajua tunaona kila mtu anakaa nyinyi ni waria. Nikamwambia kwa hivyo sisi wote tunakaa waria. Kwa hivyo sisi wote wenye tunakaa, ukiona mtu mweupe ana ndevu ni waria. Nikamwambia sisi wote si waria.
The term walalo, derived from walal, the Somali word for sibling, is commonly used to refer to Somalis in Kenya. For those who bear no origin or connection with Somalis in any way, the term can be derogatory, especially when used by non-Somalis.